man in his 30s is dead following an early morning industrial accident downtown. The Ministry of Labor launching an investigation. Good afternoon. A hydro worker has died in hospital after sustaining serious injuries on the job.
Toronto Hydro says it happened while maintenance work was being done inside a vault. CTV's Janice Golding is live this afternoon near Queens Quay with the details. Janice, what can you tell us?
Hi, Michelle. I can tell you that power is still out to a number of customers after a very tragic workplace accident claimed the life of a man in his 30s overnight here along the city's waterfront. Now, Toronto Fire says that they were called to the scene at around 1:50 in the morning to respond to an industrial accident in the area of Queens Quay West and Ree Street. Toronto Fire says a hydro worker was in a vault and was believed to have been electrocuted. He was removed from the vault by firefighters with life-threatening injuries. He would later die in hospital. Another person also sustained non-life-threatening injuries. Responding crews immediately shut power off in the vault, cutting off power to what we were told was about 800 customers, a situation that persisted overnight and into the morning. In a statement this morning, Toronto Hydro wrote, "We can confirm that we experienced a tragic workplace incident early this morning while our crews were completing planned maintenance inside a vault in the York Street and Queens Quay area. We're deeply saddened to share that this incident resulted in a loss of life." Toronto Hydro is fully cooperating with the Ministry of Labor training and skills development, and we are focused on supporting the workers' family and our employees through this difficult time. The Ministry of Labor, meanwhile, issued its own statement this morning saying it was reported that a worker came into contact with live wires, resulting in fatal injuries. The ministry extends its sincere condolences to the family and colleagues of the worker. Ministry inspectors have been assigned to the scene and are currently on site. Now, at last check, which was about 5 minutes ago, Toronto Hydro's website indicated that there was still a power outage to anywhere between 1,000 and 5,000 customers in the area. And while we were originally told that this would be resolved by the noon hour, it is currently saying that the time of resolution is to be determined. Reporting live from Janice Golding, now back to Michelle and Nathan.
Thank you, Janice. And last night in Scarborough, crews were able to knock down a 2-alarm residential fire. This broke out after 11:30 at a home on White Heather Boulevard near Finch and McCowan. The flames spread to a neighboring property before they were put out. Toronto Fire reported major damage to the home's roofs, but no injuries. The cause is under investigation.
An Ontario court is hearing more witness testimony today in the trial of 2 people accused of killing a police officer. OPP Constable Greg Pritchalo was shot in December 22 while responding to a car in a ditch near Brantford. The Crown prosecutor told jurors yesterday that Pritchalo's body camera captured the moment he was killed. Jurors are expected to hear from witnesses that the 2 accused sped off in an allegedly stolen car, leaving Pritchalo lying on the road. Randall McKenzie and Brandy Stewart Sperry pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder.
Still ahead on CTV News at noon, a series of meetings are being held today at all levels of government, all talking Trump tariffs. Toronto's Mayor Olivia Chow is in Washington alongside other mayors from Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. We'll have more details coming up a little later in the newscast.
We turn now to a major developing story overseas. A powerful earthquake struck Myanmar and neighboring Thailand, killing at least 150 people. The 7.7 magnitude quake hit at midday and was followed by a strong aftershock. The full extent of casualties and destruction is not yet clear, but most of the deaths occurred in Myanmar, where there is extensive damage. More than 700 others were injured. In Thailand, search and rescue efforts are underway after a building collapsed in the capital city of Bangkok, which has been declared a disaster area to facilitate a response to the earthquake. And CTV's Renee Rogers joins me now with more details. Renee, what is the latest on this?
Yes, Nathan. Hi. As you mentioned there, we can now confirm at least 150 people are dead after that 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck in Myanmar. We have found out that 144 people have been confirmed dead in Myanmar, and then at least 8 people have been confirmed dead in neighboring Thailand, in the capital city there of Bangkok, where we are getting stunning and horrifying video of the damage caused after a high-rise building under construction collapsed during that quake. Dozens of people feared buried underneath. Now, as for the deaths, we know, according to local reports, that 2 of them at least were construction workers who were working on that site when the building collapsed. There have been reports that 7 people were able to be rescued from the site of that damage, but just an absolutely chaotic scene on the ground as many high-rise apartment buildings had to be evacuated and people reportedly screaming as they watched other high-rises swaying back and forth during this powerful earthquake.
I mean, not only is that there the earthquake, but there's also a civil war going on. How is that complicating rescue efforts?
Yes, that is right, Nathan. So Myanmar, where the epicenter of this earthquake was, is right in the middle of a civil war. A military junta took over there in 2021. And ever since then, information has been tightly controlled at the best of times. Not only that, but we're hearing different rescuers talking about some of the challenges getting, to the different areas, the different regions that need help in Myanmar because of this war that has been going on. You're looking at some of the damage there to a historical building. There was also part of a royal palace that was damaged, as well as a 90-year-old bridge toppled over. And in Myanmar, a state of emergency has been declared in 6 regions and states. The rescue efforts and the cleanup efforts expected to take a very long time out from here, Nathan.
All right, CTV's Renee Rogers with the very latest on the earthquake in Myanmar and Thailand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Back here at home, let's take a live look at our city this afternoon as we head into the weekend. Definitely cloudy conditions. That sunshine from yesterday is gone as we anticipate some potentially troublesome weather on tap for later today and through the weekend. There is a special weather statement in effect. Let's bring in CTV's Lindsay Morrison for a look at the current conditions. And hey, it's early spring, Lindsay, and when the temperature hovers above and a little bit below freezing, then we get into this tricky stuff.
It is going to be tricky, Michelle, especially around Toronto. We could straddle that freezing mark a couple of times here, which brings potential for rain or for freezing rain. We are under a special weather statement, but areas of York region, Durham region now under a freezing rain warning. And you can see just how widespread that warning is now. We're starting to get a little bit of snow in through eastern sections of Ontario. We've got some rain pushing into Windsor. All is dry for the time being here in the GTA. It is cloudy, though, and we can expect those showers to begin this afternoon. Risk of freezing rain begins this evening. Winds today are coming out of the east. They're much lighter than they've been the last couple of days. We're at 3 degrees right now. We're really not expecting to warm up all that much from here. In fact, the temperature will fall to about 0 overnight tonight. And again, risk of freezing rain is going to be there throughout this weekend. Potential for an ice storm outside of the GTA. We'll tell you everything you need to know when it comes to your weekend weather coming up. For now, though, Nathan, I'll send things over to you.
Right. Thank you, Lindsay. With Canadians facing even more tariffs, Mark Carney had his first phone call with the U.S. president this morning since becoming Prime Minister of Canada's caretaker government. Trump later posted this on Truth Social saying, "I just finished speaking with Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada. It was an extremely productive call. We agree on many things and will be meeting immediately after Canada's upcoming election to work on elements of politics, business, and all other factors that will end up being great for both the United States of America and Canada. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and we're hoping to get more details later this afternoon when Mark Carney is scheduled to speak in Montreal." Yesterday, he offered a preview of what he'd be speaking about with the president.
Last night, the President of the United States reached out to schedule a call. I appreciate this opportunity to discuss how we can protect our workers and build our economies. I will make clear to the President that those interests are best served by cooperation and mutual respect, including of our sovereignty.
Before his appearance in Montreal, Carney is scheduled to take part in a virtual meeting with Canada's premiers.
Now, that meeting will focus on Canada's response to the automotive duties announced this week by Donald Trump.
And Premier Ford's expected to take part in the meeting with Prime Minister Carney and other premiers. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris is live with all the details. Siobhan.
So you've heard how the U.S. president qualifies his call with the Prime Minister. Mark Carney will surely fill in all the premiers about how it went from his perspective and whether it changes the game at all about what is coming next week. As you mentioned, this meeting called on back-to-back Fridays, this time to talk about incoming auto tariffs, what the plan is for retaliation. Doug Ford had to dip out of an event here in Brampton. He was here to turn the soil, break ground on an incoming new hospital for the city of Brampton, something that's been in the works for years now. He acknowledged that he'd have to leave early to participate in this very important call, but there is much more discussion on the tariff front today. Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow is in Washington with other mayors from across Canada, the United States and Mexico, also putting their heads to talk about tariffs. We heard from her about the damage this will do to economies on both sides of the border. Here's more what we heard from those leaders this morning.
I know I'm getting off topic, but my message to Mr. Lutnick the other night when he called, Canada's not for sale. We'll never be a 51st state, and we're going to fight like we've never fought before.
This tariff business, totally senseless, I don't like, hurtful, have just stopped everybody in its track.
Yeah.
And it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt the cost of living of Americans because it means the gasoline price is going to go up, grocery price is going to go up, housing price is going to go up, everything is going to go up. Like, why?
Speaking both on MSNBC and on CNN this morning, Mayor Olivia Chow was highlighting some steps that the city and the province have taken, like that canceled Starlink deal and also the focus on buying local in Toronto. Reporting live from Brampton, I'm Siobhan Morris. Nathan and Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Siobhan. To the federal election campaign, and there are now 31 days until Canadians can cast their ballots. This morning, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was in Toronto promising new rules for corporate landlords.
We are going to ban that practice once and for all. And on top of that, we are going to end the handouts. The federal government gives money and low-interest loans to large corporate landlords that are actually exploiting their tenants. So we are going to end those handouts. If you're gouging your tenants, you're not getting any money from the federal government. We're going to end that.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is campaigning in British Columbia and is set to hold a news conference in Nanaimo later this afternoon. And Liberal leader Mark Carney has put his campaign on hold for that meeting with the premiers on the ongoing U.S. tariff threat. Let's bring in CTV's Jeremy Charon, who joins us now from Ottawa. Jeremy, we mentioned Trump and Carney spoke over the phone this morning. That phone call is over. What about the other leaders? What are they saying?
Yeah, I mean, that call certainly will be looking to learn more from Mark Carney today on how that call went. The other leaders, I'm sure, will be asked today about that call, asked to react to that call, but we haven't seen any specific reactions yet. What we've seen leading up to this call and prior to this call happening is Mark Carney faced some criticism for not, being willing to talk to Donald Trump. Donald Trump being the #1 focus really in this election and something all leaders have been forced to address. We saw Mark Carney take some criticism. And so now we know that that call has happened. Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social about that call. And, it's important to note kind of a shift in tone from Donald Trump following this call. He referenced Mark Carney as Prime Minister, which is a change from previously, for some time now, only referencing to Justin Trudeau as governor, and called it a positive call, said that they'll be meeting again after the federal election. Of course, that will remain to be seen whether or not Mark Carney is still the Prime Minister after the federal election. But certainly interesting to note that there's been a significant change in tone from the U.S. president following this call. I think what we can expect to continue to see on the campaign trail, and of course, Mark Carney, as you've touched on, taking a break from the campaign today. He did the call with Donald Trump. We'll learn more from him on that later today. He's meeting with the premiers. We'll get a debrief on that as well, expecting to hear more. I think what we can expect to see from the other leaders is a continued effort to shift their messaging and their focus to meet the moment when it comes to whatever Donald Trump has said most recently. We saw that yesterday. The NDP shifted their whole campaign, went to Windsor, focused on the auto sector after the announcement of the tariffs. What we're seeing today is Pierre Poilievre making an announcement on fentanyl. I think that we can expect his messaging to focus on tackling fentanyl. He's promising to impose mandatory life sentences for fentanyl traffickers. That is part of what he is announcing today. But there's a connection there with Donald Trump and the tariffs as well, of course, because fentanyl has been one of the #1 issues Donald Trump has talked about at the border. I think we can expect, moving forward, all of these campaigns will be working hard in the war rooms to try and, not only shift their campaigns where they're going to adjust to whatever the latest hot topic is, if you will, when it comes to the trade war, but also being very careful with their messaging and very thoughtful with their messaging in order to tie any new policy announcements in some way to the trade war and impacts on these tariffs. So Donald Trump really, early on in this election, has kind of thrown a wrench in things, partially to be expected, but certainly we're seeing the extent of what kind of an impact he's having early on here.
Definitely, because even though Mark Carney's taking a break from the campaign, him being front and center, tackling this major issue facing our country, you could argue it helps his campaign.
Absolutely, Michelle. That may be the biggest challenge for the other leaders, is to be able to meet the moment as well as Mark Carney is as Liberal leader, while he's also acting as Prime Minister, as you've pointed out, right? There's no question that taking a step away from his campaign today to address the threat of tariffs, the incoming auto sector tariffs, this latest wave, if you will, one could argue helps his campaign in a way that other leaders simply don't have the opportunity. So there's no question that even by pausing his campaign, there is an impact being had on his campaign today through his work as Prime Minister.
It is going to be so interesting to see what lies ahead in the next month for this pivotal time in our country. CTV Jeremy Charon following it all from Ottawa. We really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Toronto City Councillors have voted to give themselves a raise. Members of council haven't received a pay increase since 2006, when it was set at around $137,000 a year. But in the past, they have received cost of living increases. A staff report had recommended a $33,000 salary increase, noting the unique demands placed on councillors. The 24% hike was approved yesterday by a vote of 15 to 8. Mayor Olivia Chow's pay is not impacted, but she called the figure a bit steep. She added she thinks third parties should make decisions on salary increases.
In the UK, King Charles smiled and waved to crowds this morning, a day after spending time in hospital dealing with side effects from his cancer treatment. The royal motorcade was spotted leaving Clarence House. The monarch is heading out of London for the weekend. The palace says the king's side effects prompted doctors to bring him in for observation and cancel some events as a precaution. Lindsay.
So we could be in for a couple of different types of precipitation as we make our way through this weekend. What it looks like a sure thing is some rain. And of course, that's where the precip falls through some warmer air. But the big risk this weekend is going to be freezing rain. That's where there's a layer of colder air right at the surface. And that rain then freezes on contact and makes for a slippery mess. In the worst case scenario, that freezing actually builds up on things like power lines and tree branches, and they can come crashing down. Ice pellets a possibility too, especially in communities where the temperature is going to be a little bit colder. See here the purple on this map. These are the areas that I'm most concerned about tonight, tomorrow, and Sunday, especially around places like Barrie, Muskoka, Peterborough, and Kingston. We're going to talk about these areas, plus our weekend forecast here in Toronto. We'll also show you the difference compared to southwestern Ontario. That's coming up here on CTV News at noon. We'll be right back.
We take you to Washington this hour, where a delegation of Canadian, U.S., and Mexico mayors have been meeting regarding U.S. tariffs. Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow there is among several Canadian mayors. Let's listen in live to what she has to say.
So much in common. And that spirit of unity gives us that hope as we share our stories of resilience, as we share our best practices on how we could get through this trade war by connecting, continually connecting with each other. The word that came out that I heard was solidarity, of being together. And we remain hopeful that our voices will be heard, because we are a level of government closest to the people. And when people speak out, no one can ignore them. That's why we remain hopeful and will continue to connect with each other, continue with this friendship, and continue this journey, because we know we will pull through all of this trade war stronger together.
Muchas gracias. Primero, en primer término, agradecer.
All right, as another mayor takes the mic, we'll just tell you that this is the Mayor's Trade Summit on U.S. tariffs. Certainly, while U.S.-Canada relationships are strained, this situation, the risks to not only Canada but Mexico, has really had a unifying effect. And you've got Canadian mayors, including Windsor's Mayor Drew Dilkins, and 8 Canadian mayors right now are taking part. And Mayor Olivia Chow earlier today was talking on U.S. networks as well, just trying to send the message that these tariffs are a bad idea for both countries. We will leave it there, but we'll continue to follow this developing story. There's no telling where the tariff situation will go in the days ahead.
But as far as the weather, maybe a bit more predictable. However, I got to say, I've never seen a forecast so odd where Windsor is going to get 22, according to some
degrees.
of these. Yeah, I'm thinking maybe I'll go to Windsor for the weekend,
right?
As opposed to what we're going to get.
Yeah, so it's going to be very mild across southwestern Ontario. That's a big difference compared to eastern sections of the province and even here in the GTA. And temperatures play such a big part of the forecast when we're talking about freezing rain. It's difficult to forecast anyway, and then you get a situation like this, a boundary separating the warm air and the cold air, and we're right there, right at risk of seeing some colder air and hence some freezing rain. In fact, it's looking a little more likely today than it was even yesterday. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm Injury Lawyers. You don't pay unless they win. Competing temperatures and then precipitation on the way. What you're seeing right now is footage from Edmonton, Alberta yesterday. Why is this important? Well, the snow that's been falling there and in parts of Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and now northwestern Ontario, this is all part of the same first system that's going to impact us here in the lower Great Lakes. Less of a concern for us is snow. More of a concern for us here locally in the GTA is freezing rain. And we're also expecting just some plain rain, if you want to call it that. And there could be a pretty significant amount of it. So flood concerns in some areas as we make our way through this weekend, already getting some light snow in eastern sections of the province. But this is the big one. Freezing rain warning in place around Georgian Bay, north of Toronto in York region, east of Toronto in Durham region, extending right through the Ottawa Valley, impacting Kingston and Peterborough. Big concerns in your neck of the woods this weekend, too. Here's why. We're looking at really one round after another of moisture, rain, freezing rain possibility, and snow a little bit further to the north. Let's talk timing first. So there's late this afternoon, 4 p.m. We're expecting some showers to begin. First risk of that freezing rain looks to come a little later in the evening. We'll say 7, 8 p.m. Overnight, big concerns again in through eastern sections of Ontario, Parry Sound to Peterborough to Prince Edward County. We'll get a little bit of a dry slot here in the GTA, but the wet weather will be back. There's midday tomorrow into Saturday night and early Sunday morning. I'm concerned once again about the risk of freezing rain here locally in Toronto. If you do have any travel plans this weekend, you'll want to consider slick road conditions. And there's Sunday morning as well. So again, areas now north and west of the GTA getting into some of that freezing rain as well. Some of this could end up falling as ice pellets, which would actually be better because you can shovel that away. Freezing rain has the potential to be a little more dangerous because you just don't see it. It can create black ice, or in the case of some of these areas, significant ice buildup on trees, power lines, resulting in an ice storm. Remember that ice storm that we had in the GTA back in 2013? That was about 30 millimeters of ice, and it's looking very similar in some areas too. Then, of course, there's all this rainfall. Again, some of this could fall as freezing rain as opposed to rain. And then snow for areas Huntsville over toward Bancroft and the border with Quebec. Quebec. So this is a pretty active weekend. Significant weather expected. Today's high in Toronto, we've already reached it, 5 degrees early on. If you are going to be out traveling this evening, again, just be mindful of the fact that that's when we have our first risk of freezing rain, and then periods of freezing rain going to be possible for Saturday and for Sunday, too. 7-day forecast, very unsettled over the weekend. There's Monday, showers, and then Tuesday, we might get some sun just in time to welcome the month of April. That's the weather for now. Nathan, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. We're turning now to the aftermath of a powerful and deadly earthquake that has caused widespread damage in Thailand and Myanmar. Local charity Global Medic is helping to provide disaster relief to the area, preparing emergency kits and other forms of aid. And for more on this, I'm joined by Global Medic's Executive Director, Rahul Singh. Rahul, thank you for joining us. Just how dire is the situation there?
Well, look, it's pretty catastrophic. I mean, number one, it's a 7.7 earthquake, so that's significant. Number two, it was shallow. It's only 10 kilometers. But number three, the big compounding factor is the epicenter is just near Mandalay. Now, Mandalay is the second largest city in Myanmar. In the city alone, there's 1.5 million people. In the province, there's about 6.3 million people. So there's a lot of people in harm's way, and that's an issue. Now, the after effects or the ripple effects is felt as far away, 1,000 kilometers away in Bangkok or 1,300 kilometers away. You see a building under construction came down there. So it's a powerful earthquake. We've reached out to the government of Myanmar. We've worked in Myanmar in the past. And as you know, we've responded to many, many earthquakes in the past in the 90 countries that we've worked in and the 270 responses that we've done. So what we're doing is we're offering them technical assistance. So they want our drone teams to come in and give them aerial, surveillance of what's happening and better mapping and an understanding. We're offering that. We're also offering water purification equipment to come in and set up in neighborhoods and in feeding centers and in schools to make sure people have access to clean drinking water, because you can imagine what that earthquake has done to their water systems. And we're also putting on standby 900 family emergency kits. That's our initial offering to both countries, but we'll scale that up from there as they accept. And I just got off the phone with the embassy in Myanmar. They're aware of the offer, and they're just processing it now to see anything we can do to help, we will.
Well, that's encouraging. Now, you say you've been there before, but you know there's a civil war. You've got militia there as well. How are you going to overcome those challenges?
Well, I mean, those are not new challenges, right? There's a number of militias, different warlords in different parts of the country. So security is difficult at times. This area tends to be a lot more secure and a lot more easy for access. You're going to remember this is historic religious significance. Mandalay is like very beautiful, and it's like so historically significant to the country. And because it's humanitarian assistance, most people will just have to negotiate access and forge ways in, and then be able to provide people with the assistance in the form of kits, where they have longer term solutions to be able to get clean drinking water in case we can't keep coming back every day. And then, of course, it's clinics, schools, feeding centers. We'll install the equipment right there, right? And then train locals on how to use it. And then our teams, can exit. Remember, we're the emergency 911. We're that stopgap, but it's about giving equipment that will have lasting impact and, most importantly, get folks the water they need. But it is a very difficult context. It is fluid, and it's not easy.
Well, it's good to hear that you've been there before, and we wish you the best of luck. Rahul Singh, the Executive Director of Global Medic, thank you.
No, thank you.
Here at home, there are a few transit disruptions to keep in mind this weekend. Trains will not be running on Line 2 between Victoria Park and Kennedy to allow crews to carry out track work. The closure starts at 11 p.m. tonight, and shuttle buses will run through the start of service Monday. Starting on Sunday, the TTC is also scheduled to increase service frequency on Line 4 Shepherd and several bus and streetcar lines. The transit agency will also expand a pilot aimed at reducing bunching on service routes. And a heads up, if you are a GO train customer, Metrolink says the Lakeshore West line will run normally during the day tomorrow, but some evening trains will only travel as far as Aldershot GO. On Sunday, trains won't operate to or past West Harbour GO. Metrolink crews will be carrying out signal testing on the line through Hamilton. The agency says other road users should expect increased train activity in the area. Quick break. More when we return.
The Princess Margaret Home Lottery early bird prize deadline is midnight tonight. Joining me now is Ramona Oz from the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation. And Ramona, I know everybody loves the early bird prize.
That's right. Here in Muskoka, Lakefront Cottage, Bruce Lake, which I know you've been to before, total prize package valued at $2.8 million, includes $50,000 cash. And the best part is you can be living in this cottage by May 2-4 weekend. We call it a cottage, but really this has year-round living. It's fully furnished, professionally decorated, and absolutely is a four-season cottage.
And I don't think people realize when you get your tickets now, before midnight, that ticket is good for 17,000 other incredible prizes.
That's right, including our biggest grand prize ever, valued at $9 million, which includes a stunning Oakville show home and $500,000 cash. Or if that weren't your cup of tea, how about our stunning show home in Georgian Bay? That prize package is worth $2.6 million, includes the show home and $50,000 cash. And you talk about 17,000 prizes, but actually think about 17,000 winners, and we give away every single prize.
And don't forget to add on the 50-50. It's my favorite prize.
That's right. So our current jackpot is over $5.2 million. That means the winner takes home more than $2.6 million. And that's just one of our add-ons. We, of course, have our cash calendar. We have our wander list where you can win more cash, absolute bucket list destinations, so many chances to win.
Every ticket lights the way for a brighter future. So get your ticket now for some of these life-changing prizes like that 50-50 jackpot. And you will be helping fund life-saving research, which is so important.
That's right. So at the Princess Margaret, the home lottery really fuels life-saving cancer research, as you just said. Get your ticket today. We're nearly 75% sold. You don't want to miss out. Help support cancer research.
PrincessMargaretLotto.com. Get your tickets now.
It's often assumed arthritis only affects the old, but the pain and discomfort of the disease can also impact children.
A family in Sudbury is opening up about their daughter's struggles in hopes of raising awareness and helping others. CTV's Lindsay Alick has the story.
From stiffness in her neck to not being able to move her knees to experiencing pain and fatigue, baby Olivia first started showing signs and symptoms of juvenile idiopathic arthritis at just 10 months old.
Going from, being a happy kid, standing, almost walking, to then kind of regressing all the way back and just wanting to be held all the time. And so that we ended up getting our final diagnosis, I think was 15 or 16 months of age.
With no specific test to diagnose, the family spent a lot of time in walk-in clinics and with their family doctor searching for answers. Fortunately, they connected with a pediatric rheumatologist who travels north every 4 months to provide an outreach clinic through McMaster's Children's Hospital.
I myself was diagnosed with juvenile arthritis when I was 18 months old and had a very similar story. One of the reasons I'm really passionate about care in the north, in particular places like Sudbury, is I actually grew up in a Northern Ontario community in Thunder Bay, so slightly different, but I recognize how challenging it can be for families.
Through proper treatment, not only is Olivia walking again, her mother says the 2.5-year-old is truly thriving.
We know that this disease can have a lot of periods of, remission and then worsening and flare-ups, and we don't really know where we'll be heading in the direction that we're going. But right now, I mean, she's doing so well.
March is Juvenile Arthritis Awareness Month, and both women say it's important to shed light on the disease.
We hear from a lot of families that they'll tell people in their community, whether it's family members or teachers or coaches, that their kid has arthritis, and they get a lot of like, your kid can't have arthritis. That's a disease for old people, which is absolutely not true. 1 to 3 in 1,000 kids in Canada live with juvenile arthritis.
Data from Cassie and Friends shows that the autoimmune disease affects over 25,000 children in Canada, with many diagnosed between the ages of 2 to 4. Only 20% of Canadians have heard of juvenile arthritis, compared to 87% for childhood cancer. Lindsay Alick, CTV News, Sudbury.
Public health officials are advising residents to get up to date on their vaccinations as case counts grow in the measles outbreak centered in southwestern Ontario. After an infected person arrived from New Brunswick in October, Public Health Ontario says it's reported 572 measles infections, the vast majority linked to that initial case. More than 100 infections have been added to the tally since last week's update. To date, 42 patients have ended up in hospital. 41 of them were not immunized, most of them children.
When it comes to seasonal respiratory viruses, the latest update from public health officials shows more than 600 Ontarians remained in hospital because of flu, COVID, or RSV infections. Influenza cases made up more than half of that count, as lab testing shows it is still spreading at a moderate rate in this province. The figures were from the week of March 16th to the 22nd.
And picture this, a painless patch that continuously sends your health status to your phone. A team of researchers at the University of Waterloo are closer to doing just that, which would be a healthcare breakthrough for diabetes patients.
CTV's Spencer Turcott tells us it will replace needle pricks and allow for vital monitoring at all times.
This is our device called wearable optimizer.
Sometimes big breakthroughs come in small packages.
It's actually very simple. We just lift the skin up briefly and applying the side of the needle down.
It sounds simple, but the research behind it is quite complex. The team at the University of Waterloo is closer to making life more comfortable for diabetes patients.
They monitor their blood glucose level is usually using the finger prick glucometer.
A process that can be invasive. Continuous glucose monitors in the form of wearable patches that penetrate the skin have been developed before. But what's on the market now needs some work, according to this team of bright minds.
So they're using metallic and solid needles, which are long, like usually 4 millimeters, and they would go into the skin. So these are painful because they can touch the nerves.
Instead, they've developed new hydrogen microneedle patches. They're less than 1 millimeter, so when they penetrate the skin, they don't touch any nerves, allowing patients to apply the patches themselves.
The interstitial fluid is another body fluid that we have beneath the skin. It has a good resemblance to blood, especially for biomarkers like ketones and glucose and lactate as well.
The added comfort allows the patches to be worn constantly, which helps reduce the risk of serious conditions.
So if the ketone levels go up, there is a condition, it's called diabetic ketoacidosis. And again, there is no continuous ketone sensor yet available.
The idea is to have the data transferred through the patch and chip to users' smartphones, or have it uploaded to the cloud for physicians.
We're looking for a lifetime of probably 10 to 14 days for them. The disposable part is the part that would cost around $1. So the reusable parts would be probably around $100 each, but that's a one-time cost, basically.
Whereas researchers say current continuous monitoring patches cost upwards of $100 each, so far more expensive. This new and improved patch can be used for more than just diabetes patients too, thanks to help from McMaster University.
Monitoring of lactates in athletes. So athletes, they need to monitor their lactates to optimize their performance. But currently, the way that they are doing, they need to stop their exercise, prick their fingers.
To bring the technology to the market, the team recently launched a spin-off company called Aptech Health, a move they hope will change healthcare forever. Spencer Turcott, CTV News, Waterloo.
Still to come, hoping to turn the page on tariffs. Why some bookstores fear the trade war could mean disaster for their business. That's next. Amid the trade turbulence with the United States, Canada's economy saw some solid growth to kick off 2025. Statistics Canada says real gross domestic product rose 0.4% in January, thanks largely to a boom in oil and gas and mining. Growth in the goods producing sector was partially offset by a slowdown in retail, but the agency is warning there are early signs that growth hit a wall in February as the Canadian economy braced for the full impact of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs.
At the same time, a new report is linking economic uncertainty to dismal sales of new homes in the GTA last month. The Building Industry and Land Development Association says only 248 new single-family homes sold in February and 152 newly built condos. That made for the worst February on record for the sector, while nearly 22,000 units sat on the market untouched. Bild says instability related to U.S. tariff levels have further added to the reservations homebuyers already had.
Bookstores say potential tariffs could spell disaster for their business.
Books are on Ottawa's list of products that could be subject to 25% counter tariffs on American products. CTV's Connor Hogg has the details.
Inside Magpie Books in Ritchie on this snowy day, tariffs are a hot topic of conversation.
We never thought books would be added to a tariff list.
Books are part of the list of items that could be subject to 25% counter tariffs in Canada's trade war with the U.S. The owners of Magpie Books say more than 50% of the books sold in Canada are printed in the United States.
That includes books that are written by Canadian authors. That includes a lot of books that are written right here in Edmonton by Edmonton authors.
The store could be forced to take on the extra cost or pass it on to customers. Some books could also become harder to find.
Here's all the books on just our new releases table so far that I have picked up. And that's from about 30 seconds of looking.
It's enough for the Canadian Independent Booksellers Association and Canada's largest bookstore, Indigo, to issue a joint statement asking the federal government to take book tariffs off the table, saying access to books is not a luxury, but a cornerstone of a democratic, educated, and compassionate society.
It bothers me that books might suddenly increase in price a lot because reading is such an essential part of our culture and our society.
For now, it's business as usual at Audrey's Books. Co-owner Steve Budnarchuk says he isn't worrying until the tariffs actually come into effect, but he is beefing up inventory in case prices change.
There isn't much more we can do right now, and I'm trying not to lose any sleep over it.
CTV News reached out to the Department of Finance. It says you can provide feedback on the proposed tariffs until April 2nd.
Imagine increasing the price of a $40 book by 25%. That makes it pretty inaccessible to a lot of people.
Local businesses hope other Canadians will weigh in too. Connor Hogg, CTV News, Edmonton.
Boston Pizza, New York Fries, and Montana's are all franchises that have one thing in common. They're all Canadian businesses with American names.
During this trade war, that's something those companies want to make clear. CTV's Stephanie Seco reports.
It may be named after a state, but Montana's is 100% Canadian.
I think a lot of the guests do know that we're Canadian, and we're really proud to be serving up Canadian barbecue, our ribs, our steak, and celebrating our 30th anniversary.
It's a similar story for Boston Pizza, another all-Canadian brand.
You know, I think we've always, because of our name, made an effort to let people know we're Canadian, and now we're just kind of tweaking that a little bit, whether it be locally or nationally through advertising within the store and outside our four walls.
That comes at a time when Canadians are paying more attention than ever to the brands they support with their wallets amid the ongoing trade war.
Any company that can right now should step up its Canadian message and step up its Canadian footprint, because I've never seen Canadian consumers ever like this in my lifetime.
While there doesn't seem to be any confusion or impact to these businesses locally, some new questions have popped up.
Where are your products coming from, and that sort of thing, and are you serving any American products, whether they be alcohol or food? And for the most part, pretty proud to say that almost everything we serve comes from Canada.
The franchisees stress it's not just the companies that are Canadian, but the people who work there too.
I've spent most of my adult life really nurturing this brand and this wonderful restaurant, and I think it's really important for people in my community and in my country to know that Montana's is an authentic Canadian brand and that we really are grateful for your support.
Stephanie Seco, CTV News, Halifax.
The Leafs kicked off their California road trip last night in San Jose.
His shot scored. Tavares with the tip.
The Leafs trailed by 2 in the final minute of the third, but John Tavares and William Nylander scored 45 seconds apart with the goalie pulled to tie the game at 5. Toronto had 6 shots in overtime but couldn't score and lost in a shootout. The Leafs take on the Kings on Saturday.
As Canada, the U.S. and Mexico count down to the FIFA World Cup next year, Toronto has unveiled its host city poster. The city unveiled this design from Toronto-based illustrator Dave Murray. It was selected from a pool of more than 550 applicants in response to a design call back in the fall. Officials say the poster will represent Toronto on the global stage, and it was chosen because it captures the energy and passion that define both the city and the world's most popular sporting event. Fans will get a chance to check out the poster at tonight's Raptors game and tomorrow's Toronto FC game.
Coming up, getting creative in outer space. A NASA astronaut has designed his own zero-gravity coffee cup so he can enjoy his morning brew. Details after the break. A cup of coffee that is out of this world. An astronaut is still finding a way to get his dose of caffeine in space. This is astronaut Don Pettit having his morning coffee on board the International Space Station. Pettit designed what he calls the capillary cup to work in zero gravity. Now, he says he wanted to get that coffee aroma, which you can't smell in the standard bag and straw version, normally given to astronauts. That looks way better.
Yeah. Gravity, lack of gravity, an issue up there for us down on Earth. This weekend, it's going to be the weather, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays out and how it impacts us.
Yes, so we are going to get some rain. We might get freezing rain. That risk is going to be there all weekend long. You can see parts of the GTA, especially north and east, under a freezing rain warning. Now, tonight, we're going to drop near zero. That already makes things interesting. Look at tomorrow's forecast daytime highs. 3 degrees here in Toronto, 17, though, in London, and as Nation mentioned earlier in the show, maybe into the 20s in Windsor. There is your weekend and your 7-day forecast. Stay safe out there on the roads, everyone. Nathan and Michelle.
Thank you, Lindsay. That is CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and all of us here at CTV News, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6. Have a great day.